Welcome everyone to our debate this afternoon. I love this moment when everyone's joining. Please, as you sign in, take a look at the motion, remind yourself of the topic this afternoon, and tell us what you think on this topic. Do you think the most effective leaders are feared or loved? The most effective leaders, are they feared or loved? Let us know. So if you think that the most effective leaders are those that are feared, tick the yes box, and if you think that it's those that are loved, tick the no, and you can also tell us if you are undecided. So right now it's only 8% of people that think that the most effective leaders are feared. 68 are saying that they think it's loved, and then there's quite a few undecided, 21% at the moment. So we'll just wait for a few more people to join. I love it. We're well over 100 people. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. This is our 5th live virtual debate. I absolutely love chairing them and meeting all of our fantastic speakers. So thank you so much to everyone that's joined. We'll just give it a couple more minutes while everyone comes in. Oh, a few more people that have joined us late are actually ticking yes. They think that the most effective leaders are those that are feared. Interesting. It's becoming a little bit more even. So let's just give it a few more seconds. And whilst we're waiting for the rest of the audience to join us, welcome everyone. My name's Jess. I'm the Executive Director at DebateMate, Managing Director of DebateMate Limited. Really delighted to be spending the next hour with you all on our 5th live virtual debate. Welcome to those people that are tuning in with us after watching our Harry Potter debate last week. Wow, that was amazing, and we've had over 1,000 views of that since the debate. So welcome all those Harry Potter fans that are tuning in for the next debate, and we're really excited for this debate because it's another partnership one, and it's in partnership with Women of the Future. It's our 2nd partnership with them. The last time we did something together, it was an actual debate in real life at their annual conference in November. So we're really looking forward to doing this debate with them today, and to hearing from what is a fantastic lineup of speakers. So I'm just going to end the poll there. So everyone knows 13% of people think that feared is the most effective leadership technique, and 65% say loved. So 22% undecided. So let's see whether the teams can change your mind. So I'm going to end that poll. Thank you very much, everyone, for letting us know what you think on that. And what I'm going to do now is just introduce the 2 founders and CEOs of the separate companies that are partnering today. So our CEO, Margaret McCabe, who set up DebateMate 12 years ago. Without her, we wouldn't be here today. And CEO and founder, Pinky Lalani of Women of the Future. Those of you that are tuning in that know Pinky, you may well have had the pleasure of spending some time in her lovely home when she cooks a fantastic feast for us all. She's a fantastic woman, and we're delighted that they're joining us today. So welcome to both of them.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We're so excited to be here today. I'm Pinky Lalani, founder and chairman of the Women of the Future program. And we're so excited to be with you guys because you're just such an awesome organization. And I think the topic is of real interest to us. Now, at the heart of the Women of the Future, our DNA is all about kindness and collaboration. And so what we hear today in the debate is going to be of real interest to us. And we're always shining a light on leadership. And really happy that today we're launching Kindness and Leadership, 50 Leading Lights, which is our list of kind leaders for the 3rd year. And people can go on our website and nominate kind leaders who are men and women of any age. And we'll be very, very excited to be hearing their viewpoints on women in leadership and men in leadership, actually. So thank you so much for making us part of this program. And I hope everybody has a wonderful time.
Thank you so much, Pinky. I think it looks like Margaret is frozen on a lovely smile. I love the image that she's frozen on. So we'll see if she can come back later. She's definitely going to be giving her comments later on in the debate, so we can come back to her at that point. So I'm not going to be chairing the whole of the debate today. I have a fantastic co-chair who I'm delighted to introduce now. It's Naomi Kerbel. We are so pleased that she's joining us literally hours before she goes on her maternity leave. So delighted that this will be your last kind of memory of work. Naomi's a journalist for Bloomberg TV, focusing on equality, and we met when we did the equality debate at Bloomberg last year. Before her current role at Bloomberg, she worked as business editor for Sky News and in the city of Goldman Sachs. She is the host of the Show Me the Way podcast, and which is a series of conversation with women at the top of their game about how they got there. She's an ambassador and member of various charitable causes, including the Women of the Future. So welcome, Naomi.
Thank you so much, Jess. It's super exciting to be part of this. I wish I'd have had an opportunity to do this while I was at school and university. Kindness, as Pinky was saying, is key, in my opinion, when it comes to leadership. So I know which side of the debate I fall on. Now, I think before we kick off, you're going to give a few sort of housekeeping notes, which I don't know about. So I'm going to leave you to do that, Jess, and then I'll be introducing the various panelists in a moment.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Naomi. And I can see Margaret's back. Margaret, if you'd like to just say a few words before I outline the rules of the debate, that'd be brilliant.
Thanks, Jess. Sorry, I was frozen there. Thank you, Pinky, for working with us on this. It's a fantastic opportunity. Hello, everyone who's watching and joined in. It's a really exciting time for women, especially women leaders. I'm going to let the debate continue. I might come back at the end and say one or two things about the new normal. Good luck.
Great. Thank you very much, Margaret. Okay, so now please join me in welcoming the debaters so I can outline the rules of this debate. So wherever you are, in your home, in your garden, on your sofa, at your desk, please join me in a massive round of applause for our fantastic debaters. Woo! Okay, welcome everyone. So if the debaters would now like to turn their cameras on, so everyone turn their cameras on so we can see your beautiful faces. Wow, we have a fantastic group of people here today. Okay, so before we get started, let me just outline the rules. We have a debate today which is 3 on 3, so 3 people on the proposition and 3 people on the opposition. Each person is going to have 3 minutes to put forward the case for their side. I'd like to remind everyone, and the speakers have definitely asked me to say this on this debate, that they're not necessarily putting forward their personal views on this debate. They're just putting forward an argument for discussion with you all. So they have 3 minutes to put forward the case for their side. And you'll notice that during the debate, there's these points of information that happen between the sides. So if one side is speaking, the other side can interrupt with something called a point of information. It's a short interruption that can either be accepted or rejected by the speaker. So you might see some speakers saying, no, thank you. That's not them being rude. It's their choice if they want to accept or reject. And we'll have 2 speeches from each side. And before we come to the final speaker on each side, we'll be coming to you for our floor debate. So this is a very interactive debate. You've already told us where you stand on the motion. We'll be coming back to you at the end to tell us what you think the final vote is. And please try and focus on the speeches today and not necessarily on your own personal view. But in the floor debate, we'll be asking you to put questions forward and put questions and points forward through the Q&A. So you'll notice on your screen, there's the chat function, which is amazing. I can see so many people are already chatting. Hello to all those people that are saying hi to me from previous debates. You're making me feel like a celebrity, people being like, nice to see you again. So feel free to put anything you want in the chat. And then put your questions in the Q&A. And when it comes to that point, I'll be reading a number of those out, which will be addressed by the summary speakers. That's all there is in terms of the rules. Please enjoy the debate. Really looking forward to seeing what the speakers put forward on this. And over to you, Naomi.
Right, in typical virtual fashion, I had an Amazon delivery just partway through that. So I've managed to rush down the stairs, rush back up again. So if I'm out of breath, my apologies. Okay, so a quick reminder of the motion one more time before the debate begins. This House believes that the most effective leaders are those that are feared, not loved. This House believes that the most effective leaders are those that are feared, not loved. Okay, so the first speaker on the side of the proposition to open the debate will be Kitty Parker Brooks. Kitty studied politics and sociology at Cambridge, where she was a world's finalist debater. She's mentored for DebateMate for many years and joined the Mars graduate scheme after university around 4 years ago. She'll be starting a master's in global prosperity at UCL this coming September, and her favourite leader is Michelle Obama. Kitty, over to you.
Thank you for that. Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here, and such an interesting topic. And I think we can all agree, and I think we've seen from the poll at the beginning, that feared versus loved are two really kind of polarizing words, two very polarizing views. And it's my job here as the first speaker on proposition to add a bit of nuance to that and to define what we mean within the context of this debate. And I think the first thing that we need to make really clear here, and we need to recognize, is that feelings of fear or love are things that someone else has towards you. So yes, you can do things that encourage someone to feel fear or love towards you in a particular direction, but ultimately you don't control that. You don't control the way a person feels towards you. And I think the thing that, when I was reflecting on it this morning, if we look at many of the great leaders that we've seen historically and in the present day, is that actually some of the strongest, bravest, most diligent and impressive leaders are feared. You know, one of my favorite leaders is Michelle Obama, and look at how many people fear Michelle Obama and have had nothing but negative things to say to her or attack her. And that's because some of those most impressive, courageous leaders are challenging the status quo. They're saying, come on, let's take this in a different direction. Let's do something different. So that doesn't mean they're not also compassionate and thoughtful and empathetic. But what we're saying here on side proposition is it is better to be the type of leader who is willing to take a stand and be brave and challenge people, particularly challenging the status quo, even if that means that the reaction you cause in many is a feeling of fear. So sometimes that feeling will be respect, sometimes it will be they find you impressive, sometimes it will be they find you a bit intimidating, and at its worst, it will mean that people can fear you. But it's more important that we expect of our leaders that they compassionately, empathetically, but courageously take a stand, even when it causes people to fear them. And that's our view here on side proposition. And I feel particularly strongly about that. And I think it's great to be working with Women of the Futures in this debate, because I think this is particularly relevant for female leaders. From a really, really young age, women are told that they need to be amenable. It's more important for people to love you. It's more important for people to find you, really kind in a very prescriptive notion of what kind means. And therefore, often when we see the strongest, bravest female leaders, they create a sense of fear. If you look at examples of Emmeline Pankhurst, the numbers of articles that we find in, newspapers from hundreds of years ago saying, who is this woman and what's she talking about and what's her ideology? That is true fear. She created true fear in many people, but she also created change. And we think on side proposition, particularly for women and female leaders, it's really important that they feel able to be brave and courageous and diligent and compassionate, even if it means many people fear them. And that's what we stand for on side proposition. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Kitty, fantastic. Okay, so moving on to our next speaker. Now, this is the first speaker on the side of opposition, and he is Ade Odusola. Ade is an executive program director at DebateMate and has been involved since he was 11 as a student on the schools program. He completed his degree in economics and philosophy at Nottingham before joining the DebateMate team full-time in 2016. And he's been working mainly on DebateMate's behavioural intervention schemes, such as the Debate Box program. And as part of the DebateMate Limited team, Ade works on corporate training, delivering communications training to graduates in the industry, whilst also helping to deliver corporate engagement events through large-scale industry showcase debates. And Ade's favourite leader is Malcolm X. Over to you, Ade.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Nicole. Now, on Opposition today, we're not going to overpromise. We're going to be honest. Ultimately, what counts as effective leadership changes depending on who is leading who and in what context. So I'm going to talk to you today about what FAIR is in team units on a small scale and what it looks like. Sam's going to talk to you about what love and kindness in leadership is and what it looks like on a large scale. And we're going to do it with a focus on relationships between people. And that's going to win in today's debate, because Kitty and the proposition are not just wrong because of an entire history of examples of great leaders who are loved. They're also wrong because they're overlooking some very basic aspects of human nature. First, I want to address some of the things that Kitty said. She said that it's pretty much impossible to be loved as a leader because, you know, how you're perceived depends on other people. I don't think, though, that it is. No, thank you, Kitty. I don't think it is a sensible doctrine for business to say, I'm going to lead effectively by scaring all of my business opponents and people in other groups into agreeing or achieving my ends. But secondly, even if it was true and she was right about that, actually within your own team, that would be an unacceptable state of play, and it wouldn't be a great way of galvanizing and motivating people. Maybe externally it's useful, but internally, that's probably a terrible way of running your business. She spoke a lot about the way women are disproportionately expected to be loved in order to be seen as good leaders. And maybe there's something in that, actually. I think Kitty touches on a good point. But the solution is not to lead based on fear. And the reason is because the senior women that she's talking about are not the only women in this equation. What about the junior women who work for that senior woman? If she is being led by someone who leads based on fear, how can she speak up and ask for a pay rise to match her male counterparts if she's worried about the consequences? How could she ask for flexible working to care for a child if she was worried and scared of the consequences and scared of her leader? The reality is, people who are disadvantaged in business and in teams and in leadership will never be favored by a fear-based approach, because they will spend all of their psychological energy trying to build the courage to ask for things that, frankly, white men will never have to ask for. What is my argument today? If you lead based on fear and you use it to achieve your ends, you will not attract the best people within your team, and you will not get the best out of your team. This comes from a central understanding of what it is to lead, that it is an exercise in connecting with people, that if you get people to do things because they're scared of you, you undermine your connection with them and you demotivate them. A central understanding about leadership that says if people are scared of the consequences all the time, they become self-interested, and that precludes any possibility of uniting a team around a common cause. Why do we know this is true? Well, what do people do when they're scared? We know that they are uneasy. We know that when people are scared, they know their bosses determine and their leaders determine very important things like their wages and their professional opportunities and that sort of thing. We know that if they think that the person who determines these really important things is someone that they're scared of, that loads an unnecessary and unhealthy pressure on them, and that mentally exhausts people. And we know that people who are mentally exhausted because they're scared don't take risks. They're not creative, they make unforced errors, and crucially, they start to say I instead of we. There's two key implications of that on today's debate. Remember this when you decide who won at the end. Number one, if you lead based around fear, you will never get the most out of your team. It will always be suboptimal. But number two, millennials have a higher and demand a higher level and standard from their leaders. And if you rule and lead based on fear, you will never get them on board. You will never attract or retain them. And so for those reasons, you can most definitely be rest assured that the best leaders and most effective leaders are actually loved rather than feared. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Ade. Fantastic. Okay, so moving on to the second speaker on the side of the proposition, Ben Page. Ben is Chief Executive of Ipsos Mori. He joined Mori in 1987 after graduating from Oxford. Ben is a visiting professor at King's and a fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences. He serves on advisory groups at the King's Fund and the Social Market Foundation, and is a trustee at the Centre for London and at the Centre for Ageing Better.
That must be enough. That must be enough.
No, there's more. There's more.
I'll stop now.
Okay, well, let me just add your favourite leader is Barack Obama. Thank you.
Not
Over
very
to you,
original.
Ben.
But thank you very much for inviting me to do this. And it's been interesting reflecting on it, because I lead a business of 1,500 people. And one of the reasons I've stayed there for 33 years was so I could fire everybody who made me miserable when I joined as a trainee in the 1980s. So, which is one lesson quite separately from the proposition: do not shit on people on the way up, because they'll sure as hell get you on the way back down. However, when I came to this proposition, I saw the voting, and I knew what was going to happen. It's going to be a slam dunk for love, because we all want to be loved, pretty much. It's a basic human need. However, we also need to get things done, and businesses need to get things done, and we need to do things in our lives. And I reflected on Machiavelli, who, of course, looked at leadership and has had a bad press. But Machiavelli says, look, obviously it's great to be loved, but if you have to choose between being loved and feared, of course, it's better to be feared, not because it's intrinsically better, but because ultimately human beings are self-interested, and they will still do over people who love them. Or do over, even if they love somebody, they will do them over for their own advantage. And if you look at our relationships and marriages, there is evidence every day of what happens to loved people. Secondly, I think when I look at politicians, political leadership in Britain, which we've been doing since the 1970s, it's clear that the most popular politicians, and indeed the most liked politicians, I've never really asked people if they love them, but certainly the most liked politicians are not the ones, interestingly, who tend ultimately to be most successful. And instead, it's people like Mrs. Thatcher or Churchill, who, and actually, if you talk about people who actually worked with them, or even Tony Blair on a bad day, you're going to find plenty. They were not lovely to deal with. I've been in meetings with Tony Blair, and he's certainly not up close and personal. It's not going to be lovely, because ultimately they're trying to get things done. And so I think we need to acknowledge that for most of us, actually, a bit of fear is what drives us. We need to know that if we don't do something, negative consequences are likely to happen. Otherwise, I think most of us wouldn't, a lot of people wouldn't even go to work if they didn't, they didn't need to, frankly. I mean, we need to know that we need to get food on the table. We need to achieve things. I need deadlines. I'm useless without deadlines, even though I have nobody chasing me anymore. So although random acts of kindness really matter in business, although we need to show empathy, ultimately we need to have some negative consequences and a little bit of fear. And if you think about what drives you on to be successful, like a lot of people in the audience and a lot of people on this call are, ultimately some of it actually, if you look at the studies of leadership, it's actually fear that drives leaders. And fear makes us get things done. It's why we go the extra mile. It's why we stay late to do all the extracurricular things that make us successful in our careers. If we were just loved and everybody loved everybody and it was all fine, it's lovely, and we want to run places. We need to run organizations where people feel comfortable, but the backstop has to ultimately be fear. And that's how the state, the institution of the state works ultimately. That it is the only thing that's legally allowed to apply force in our lives. So my pitch for this is that, of course, I'm looking at the vote at the start. Love is a slam dunk. What's wrong with love? But ultimately, if you want to get things done, you will need a bit of fear in your soul somewhere.
Thank you very much, Ben. Yes, I, as a journalist, am useless without deadlines too. So I certainly, that chimes with me. The second speaker on the side of the opposition is Samantha Cohen. Samantha is the CEO of the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. She's co-chair of Cool Earth and served as private secretary to their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, assistant private secretary to the Queen for 8 years, and head of Royal Communications at Buckingham Palace. And it's no surprise that her favourite leader is the Queen. Over to you, Samantha.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here today, and this is, I think, an exceptionally relevant topic because I think we are all gathered at a moment when society is fundamentally changing its pivot. And I think that this debate is really acknowledging that. And we are moving from fear-based leadership to love-based leadership. And just to pick up on a couple of points that Ben made, Machiavelli, yes, he probably does get bad press, but I think, you know, one of the worst descriptions you can give of any leader in your office or your community is to call someone Machiavellian, because I think, yes, human beings are self-interested, but that, you know, everyone has a little bit of self-interest in them, but I think what is much more dominant in human beings is a desire to work as a community, to work together and to be loved and to give love. We're social animals. We love people. We love to be together. And I think, you know, a little bit of fear drives us. You say, you know, effective leaders, Mrs. Thatcher and Churchill, fear drove them. Yes, I suppose Churchill, there was a fear of the enemy invading the country. Those were very real fears. But I think overall, those two figures in history actually had overwhelmingly a passion for doing good. That was what drove them, a passion for fighting for what they believed in. And ultimately that comes down to love of the people of your country. And actually, I think on a macro level, the leaders who we turn to most, who we think of when we talk about kindness and good leadership, are people like Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, Mahatma Gandhi, who led India to independence with kindness. He preached kindness and non-violence. The Queen, who has been one of the most effective leaders this country's ever known, the longest serving monarch, is overwhelmingly kind. She is not forceful. She's never angry. She shows leadership through small acts of kindness every day. FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, one of the greatest presidents of the US, who led the US through the Depression and World War II. You know, he was a kind man and a very effective leader. You know, he said, human kindness has never weakened the stamina or softened the fiber of a free people. A nation does not have to be cruel in order to be tough. And I think those words resonate. And I think now we're being faced with another economic depression post-COVID. And I think that the whole lockdown situation and the COVID global pandemic has really shown us that without kindness, our societies would have actually collapsed. So all of our leaders who have shown kindness from a national level, a community level, frontline workers, ordinary people who are showing kindness to each other. You know, love and kindness is the glue of our society now. That's what keeps us all together. And I think, you know, it's now not survival of the fittest, but survival of the kindness. So that's the pivot I'm talking about. Society no longer feels it has to be cruel. I think leaders feel free now to be open about their softness, their vulnerability. And I think it's far more effective because people feel that they can speak up for themselves. And I think also social media has given everyone a voice. So in the past, when we had leaders who frightened us, we had to put up with that because we had no way of speaking out. It was absolutely terrifying and we couldn't fight back. But now every person has a voice through social media. They can express themselves. And I think that opens the way for kinder leadership, because leaders will be checked. And if they're not kind, they will be held to account. So again, there has been a massive global shift. And I think leaders are now being rewarded for being kind. Pinky Lilani's special index of kindness for female leaders is really important because it's incentivizing people to formalize kindness in leadership in companies. And I think that's a really important shift as well. It used to be seen as something that was a female trait and something that didn't belong in the world of business and leadership and politics. Now it does, and it's shown to be working. So I cannot stress enough how much I think kind, compassionate, loving, vulnerable leaders are not only effective, but that is the way leaders will be from now on into the future. Thank you.
So Jess, is it over to you for some Q&A now?
Yes, thank you very much, Naomi. And thank you to all the speakers that have spoken so far. Really interesting points raised. And it's really nice to see everyone commenting on the chat, their thoughts on the debate so far. And also to see so many people saying in the chat that this is the first time they've joined us. So welcome, everyone. If this is your first debate, you've definitely come in to a good one. So now what we're going to do, and please feel free to keep putting your questions and comments in the Q&A boxes now, because we'll be reading through a few of them. So these won't be answered individually. I'm going to read them out and they'll be addressed by our fantastic summary speakers, Zarina and Helena. So they'll be trying to address as many of these as they can, as well as summarizing the debate. So I'm just going to go through, there's some brilliant ones here. So we have Ndidi saying, however, if a leader is empathetic and effective at this, then they would not be feared, ? There's a question here for Kitty in the proposition. On your point about brilliant leaders like Michelle Obama being feared, the people who criticize and afraid would consider her to be a bad leader. Can you ever consider someone to be a good leader if you fear them? That's from Lauren. Anita says, debate very pertinent in the current context of the pandemic. You need empowerment, engagement, transparency and accountability, in addition to compassion and kindness, to get compliance and behavioural changes in society. Thanks for that, Anita. Kim says, the interpretation of fear and love are subjective. Does the argument not therefore depend on the individual viewpoint, influences and circumstance? Beatrice says, interesting leadership lessons learned from Shackleton, certainly an extreme risk taker who led with kindness and care and ultimately was followed on crazy missions multiple times. Kitty, in the proposition, what are your thoughts on this? When I read that, I thought that might be my mum. She's absolutely obsessed with Shackleton and his leadership. Cleo says, can I not be a leader who leads with love and has strength of authority in what I say? Why does love not equal confidence? SV says, look at global leaders and you have your answer. Trump in the US and Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, and you have your answer. Anonymous person says, fear can turn into love. It's very hard to do the reverse. Much like you can start strict with a group of students before loosening up, whereas the reverse is impossible. Therefore, a bit like Machiavelli, if I had to pick one, I'd start with fear and do what I can to turn it into love. I love that point from Anonymous. I used to be a teacher myself, and when we were talking about this debate, I remember that whole thing of being told, don't smile before Christmas. You go in September, don't smile before Christmas, and you'll have your students under control. Serena, one of our biggest fans on the debate, she joins us every time. Welcome again, Serena. What about the bias held by individuals that determines whether they interpret a leader as someone they love or someone they should fear? Do people love what they recognize and fear what they don't? How can we change that? Love that question. Sean says, in the context of the pandemic, the countries that have been had the most effective response are countries which have high public trust, confidence and popularity in their leaders. Countries that have the poorest responses and highest death rates are leaders which may be seen and feared. Wondering if leaders pursuing adoration are more likely to be more effective. Interesting point. Thanks, Sean. Sharon says, since there was a mention about politicians, you quoted, fear makes us successful and get things done. Don't you think it's rather respect and trust towards that makes them more successful? Thanks, Sharon. There's quite a few here. I'm not sure if we're going to get through them all, but I'll read a few more before we come to the summary speakers. So Terry says, if you want to make everyone happy, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. Quote from Steve Jobs. Love that. I've seen so many quotes from Steve Jobs over the past couple of days over LinkedIn and social media. Oriella says, what is a kind leader? Is there a sense of connection with leading in a democratic way? We got a point from Irene. If I think about feared leaders, the ones that spring to mind are Stalin, Hitler, Pinochet, which were all bad. Who are good feared leaders? Perhaps the summary speakers could maybe comment on that. Catherine says, don't you think it depends on how you define fear? It's a spectrum. Fear can be defined as good nervous energy that is exceptional, an exceptional athlete can experience before starting a race. Fear of failure can drive individuals to ultimately succeed. This fear can be good for some people, whilst it can be destructive for others. It comes down to the individual and how they respond to fear and how they internalize it. However, when you layer on societal expectations, today love will win over fear. Don't know how many people that have been watching The Last Dance and Michael Jordan documentary, definitely been, as you're all talking, reflecting on that. Okay, there's a few more here, and then we'll come to the summary speakers. So Zarina, you can get ready. You're going to be speaking next. So Stella says it's important to balance rules, boundaries, and performance management with trust, investment, and authority. Okay, cool. And then there's a few more. Sorry, guys, we're not going to have time to get through everyone. Zaren says a leader has to govern strictly, yet appear benevolent to the public. But the problem is that as a human, we always look for someone to blame for everything that goes wrong. And the bulk of the blame usually falls upon the government. Okay, I think we might leave that there just in the interest of time. One more here from Imogen. Is fear a short-term metric for progressing deadlines rather than a long-term strategy for retaining and getting the most from a team? Okay, fantastic points there. Thank you, everyone. Please keep them coming in, and if we have a chance to read some of them out at the end. But what I'm going to do now is hand back over to Naomi to hear the summary speeches, to introduce the summary speakers.
Thank you so much, Jess. Wow, some amazing questions there. So great pleasure to introduce the third speaker on the side of the proposition, Zarina Belgam. Zarina is an assistant program director at DebateMate. She started as a DebateMate student in year 7 at Preston Manor School, where she excelled in debating so much that she was captain of the England team at the World Schools Debating Championships, coming in 3rd, and was awarded the top speaker at Oxford Schools Championships, which is the largest schools debating competition in the world. Zarina will begin studying economics and management at Oxford in September. Many congratulations, Zarina. And Zarina's favourite leader is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Africa's first elected female head of state. Over to you, Zarina.
Thank you, Naomi. I think the first thing to say is when we talk about political leaders like Gandhi or elected politicians, it's almost a truism that in a democratic state, the people who are at the top are a function of the people who are liked the most because you have to vote for them. That wasn't really this debate. This debate was about the margins. It's about what they do when they close the door, when they have their bureaucrats in front of them. It's about what business leaders do when they need results so that they can deliver those to the wider public and continue to be loved. We say the way to get results is to utilize fear because it is far more effective than attempting to be loved. So I'm going to answer 3 questions. Firstly, is it easier to be feared as a manager or liked? Secondly, are you personally more accountable as a manager when you're feared or when you're liked? And finally, are you able to be compassionate whilst being feared? On the first question, I think the first reason that fear is so important is because to some extent, it is good that you are seen as distant from your team, because then you are seen as a kind of neutral arbitrator if there are any issues between your team. The problem with trying to be loved is that you won't be able to be loved by everyone in the same way. As Kitty described, people will take to you differently, and that is out of your control. But the worst situation is one where you're seen as having favorites because you happen to be able to get closer to some people than others. That makes for a far worse team dynamic when there's jealousy involved and you're accused of actively being prejudiced against some people over others. That is when there is no trust in your team. But secondly, we think that you're able to set standards and enforceable principles and boundaries. You can't do that when you're trying to be loved because you can never try to be the bad guy. And here's the other problem. If I'm your friend and I blur the lines between professionalism and between us being friends, you feel more offended when I critique you because it is now somebody who, in my frame of reference, is my friend who is critiquing me. I have a higher tolerance for, say, when Jess critiques me than when my sister critiques me, for example. It is just a function of the nature of relationships. That doesn't mean that I don't like Jess, but it means that I know there are enforceable boundaries and I fear consequences if I do badly. And this is really important because let's face it, the majority of tasks you do in any professional settings are menial admin tasks, which nobody wants to do but need to be done. And so the real difference in this debate is, sure, on our side, we'll have more efficient workers who sometimes make mistakes, but on side opposition, people slack off People forget deadlines and people don't care. We think that that is far worse for any outcome you would like to achieve. But the second thing is, are you more accountable personally? Because when you're feared and you're an incompetent manager, I think that your employees can tolerate your high demands, but they cannot tolerate your hypocrisy. So you're likely to get into greater conflict with your employees. They're going to go over your head to seniors or HR, and you won't last long. The only way to be feared is to lead by example. It's to be the person who is in earliest and leaves the latest. It's to be the person who is the most efficient. We think the best managers are feared because they are good. Whereas when you're liked, you can still be professional, but you'll be frustrated because your team won't listen to you. And if you're incompetent, you can actually use the fact that you're trying to be affable to hide the fact that you're incompetent. Tell people, you don't need deadlines, it's all good. Because you don't want any scrutiny to come onto you. We think it's far worse for getting things done. But I think I'll close on empathy and the personal conversations. Because I think when your staff need to inform you of something personal, you're actually likely to be more receptive as a manager than somebody seeking to be liked, because you'll be aware that this is a special instance which requires serious attention. You can get a reputation for simultaneously being feared whilst also being supportive when it matters. I think on the other side, your staff will actually be secretly weary of the superficial friendly facade and manager attempting to be loved employees. I think that the genuine nature of you comes from the fact that you are a manager and it's very clear what our relationship is. And that allows us to have the deep conversations when it matters. So for empathy and productivity, please vote for side proposition.
Serena, thank you very much. Now, finally, the third speaker on the side of the opposition is Baroness Helena Kennedy, QC. Helena has spent her professional life giving voice to those who have least power within the system, championing civil liberties and promoting human rights. She's used many public platforms, including the House of Lords, to which she was elevated in 1997, to argue with passion, wit, and humanity for social justice. She's also written and broadcast on a wide range of issues, from medical negligence to terrorism to the rights of women and children. And we didn't get her favourite leader. In fact, maybe Jess, maybe Helena, you can say now who your favourite leader is. Remember to unmute. There we go.
I think I'm unmuted now. My favorite leader in recent times, of course, was Nelson Mandela. And the reason why was because of his strength of character, because of his authority, because of his inclusiveness, because of the ways in which he had a vision for a new South Africa, and he did not seek to scapegoat the white minority who had ruled him and who had in fact sent him to prison. And I just want to go back to something that I learned at a stage in my life where I was taking on different leadership roles. I spent some time in the United States, and I went to different sessions, both at the Harvard Business School and at the Harvard School of Government. And the best leadership, and it's already been said by Sam, the best leadership recognized both in the business world and in the world of politics and government is horizontal leadership. There's an acceptance now that the best kind of leadership is not the old command and control form of leadership, the sticks and carrots leadership. You get a bonus if you do it, but you won't if you don't. The instilling of fear, the culture being a fearful one inside an organization or inside a nation, that does not produce the best results. And so the best leadership is now seen as being horizontal, collegiate, inclusive. And so what I learned then was that what you do as a leader is you create a vision. You have something which people can see and gather around, and that they feel that they can contribute to, and you let people feel that they have something to offer that they can contribute, and you then give them some sense of independence in performing the role that they play, whether it's in society or whether it's in a team or in a company. And you then basically encourage them, take the time to actually create a collegiate spirit in order to produce the goods. That does not mean that you don't have a level of, if you like, a showing of your own accountability, your own leadership in terms of making decisions, but that combination of things and inclusiveness creates better leadership. And I think that the best leaders nowadays, in fact, are women coming through who do know how to do that effectively. And it is about being respectful of the humanity of the other person, and it's not about scapegoating. And I want to talk about politics. We are at the moment in our world not seeing this kind of leadership. In many places, we're seeing authoritarianism. Populism gives rise to leaders, mainly strong men, all seen as strong men, and that it goes from Trump to Bolsonaro to Duterte in the Philippines, and in Eastern Europe, Orbán and the leader in Poland. And what they do is they instill fear. And they instill fear by making people in a society feel that they're under threat. And they instill fear by saying it's the immigrants who are doing this to you. It's those people over there who are causing a decrease in your economic stability. It's those people who are responsible. And it's what, of course, Hitler did to the Jews and to the communists at the time in the 30s. So let's not be unclear about this. Fear is a poison in a society, and it's a poison inside an organization, because when someone is a bully and tries to get his way, and it's usually, I'm afraid, of him, but it can be women too. If someone's trying to get their way by instilling fear, you do not get the best productivity and you don't get the best outcomes. Franklin Roosevelt, who was mentioned by Sam, was a great wartime leader in the United States. And one of the things is that he believed strongly, and he really promulgated, was we have to maintain freedom from fear, because that is what is the groundswell in a decent society. Because once you start scapegoating people, you're in difficulties, and you create a poison in your midst. And so I just want to say that top down, that kind of leadership where people do not want to hear criticism as a leader, where they surround themselves with yes men, where they don't want to actually listen to things that they may be getting wrong, that sort of leadership is inevitably unproductive and not effective. And so we have to be clear about this. It's not about schmaltzy love, you know, stroking all the people that you work for and going around and hugging them. It's about making people feel valued as human beings. And that's what a good society comes from, and that's what good workplaces come from. And so when we want to look for better leadership, we have to remove the fear element. That's not the way to get it done. It's not about not being firm. It's not about not setting goals. It's not about not setting standards. It's about all of those things, but it's certainly not about generating a culture of fear, because it's what destroys good things.
Helena, thank you so much. Jess, are we going to hear from Pinky or Margaret now, or shall we go straight into?
What we're going to do is do the poll next. So thank you from me to everyone that's spoken, and to Naomi for excellent chairing. I think if you weren't going on maternity leave, I'd be calling you up every 2 weeks when we do these debates. So please do it again. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of the speakers. What a brilliant debate. So now we come to the final poll. So we're going to get your decision now on the debate. Do you think it's better to be feared or loved in order to be an effective leader? A reminder that the results in the opening poll were 13% that said it's better to be feared, 65 said it was better to be loved, and 22 were unsure. So I am just going to relaunch the poll now. That should pop up.
As Helena said, we want you to feel valued as human beings, so please take part.
Yeah, there we go. And just Naomi's going to announce the result, but before she does that, just wanted to thank everyone for coming today, and also just to tell you that if you want more information on any of the work that we're doing at DebateMate, you can check out DebateMate Virtual. We do lots of training. We've got these amazing virtual debate clubs that we're running with students across the world, led by our top university mentors. So check those out as well. We'd love to have your children take part in those. And also to say that we're really excited. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be doing a webinar that's open to the public. We've never done that before. We've only ever worked with companies. but we've decided to do a webinar where we basically teach you to speak like Ade and Zarina and the other speakers on the panel, but we teach you to speak like a world champion and give you the skills that you've seen demonstrated today. So we'll send that in the follow-up, and we're going to have a special code for everyone that joined us today to give you £5 off that webinar. Luckily, Zarina has agreed to come along and actually talk us through how she structures a speech. So we're really looking forward to that. Okay, I think, Naomi, the poll looks like it's almost finished now. So
okay, am I going to get that up? I'm just looking. I can't see it right now. When I click on it, it just asks me to answer the question.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Okay, so it's changed. So no, it's changed only a little bit. Okay, so are the most effective leaders those that are feared, not loved? Yes. And no. So the opposition has it. So it's those that are loved. Yes, 32%. So certainly you lifted it up, proposition, from 13%. No. They should be loved, was 64%, it was 65%, now 64%, and the undivideds have come down from 22% to 5%. So very many congratulations on winning so many people over.
Yeah, thank you very much, Naomi. And Mark, turn your camera on if you're there. It'd be great to have some closing remarks from you. And just while she's doing that, thank you again. What a fantastic panel of speakers. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful sunny day on a really interesting topic. We really appreciate your time. I know how busy everyone is, but it's certainly for me been a real pleasure running these virtual debates. So Margaret's just joining us again. And also just to say, we've been delighted to be nominated. DebateMate and Margaret have been nominated by UCL for a fantastic prize in education, the Yeadon Prize, where the prize is just a small $4 million for our program.
Wow.
Fingers crossed. Over to Margaret for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks to all the speakers. That was just amazing. I'm always in awe. And, you know, we have a pool of great leaders. I just wanted to say something. I just wanted to thank Pinky. I can't see her on the screen, but I was lucky enough to receive one of her awards earlier this year. And it's made me think quite a lot about it, because I said when we were nominated that, of course, you've got to be kind, like as if I could do the opposite. I'd have to work harder not to be kind. But it has made me think quite a lot about it, because I think love and fear, neither of those qualities are really qualities that any leader would aspire towards. Leadership's all about boundaries. And as with DebateMate, we set out to take on the toughest problem in the world, which is to sort out education and make it available to those who don't have it globally. So that's a really big problem. It's a tough problem. I work with a great team. How to achieve it? You've got to be strong to achieve that sort of objective. And kindness is the only way to really achieve it. Kindness comes really from compassion. Compassion can be achieved through the mainstream mindfulness, which gives you that strength of character to be able to reach your objectives. Enabling people to live and work with dignity is all that leadership is really about in any sphere, any job, any organization. So I think now that we've got this pandemic, we know what we're doing, the new normal. I think it's a great opportunity for women. Sorry, guys, it's a great opportunity for women leaders. And I say to my team all the time that responsibility is taken, not given. So ladies, this is it. You go in there, the new normal is going to be the seats of power and the tectonic plates have shifted. So it's our opportunity now to go in and take control and to run things with dignity, with authority, and to be successful, but for the greater good, for our own good, for the greater good, and to get rid of the appalling leaders that we're seeing in the world today. So thanks very much for taking part. I look forward to seeing the result, hearing the result, and we'll all be in touch.
Thanks very much, Margaret. And thanks again to all of you for tuning in. Enjoy the sunny weekend ahead, and we'll stay in touch with you about future debates. And a special thanks again to Naomi. Good luck with your maternity leave. Send us a picture of your baby boy.
I definitely will. Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.